Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kindy Kruller, Senior Program Manager at the Illinois Green Alliance, leading the programs and partnerships of the Building Energy Hub. Welcome to the second in a series of 3 about getting started. Today, we're going to focus on planning for action from awareness to strategy. Just to give you a little bit of information on the Hub, we are a program of the Illinois Green Alliance, powered by the Illinois Green Alliance, as we like to say, to educate and train building professionals, support contractors, identify pathways for financial resources, identify opportunities to learn about codes and advanced energy policies, and connect contractors to a project pipeline. Please check out our website, and we'll drop that in the chat if you haven't been there. Sign up for our newsletter, and we'll tell you a little bit more about the Hub in a moment. We just wanted to share a bit more about this series. We think it's really important for building owners, building professionals, and others to identify their pathway to energy efficiency through building retrofits, retro-commissioning, and other pathways for reducing their overall energy use. This is our second in a series, as I've mentioned. Our first series focused on the business case, including the cost of doing nothing and opportunities to get started and thinking about your building retrofit. You can view that recording, download the slides on our website. And today we're excited to have 2 wonderful speakers to talk about planning for action. Oh, thank you. And then our final part of this series will be making it happen, talking about implementation with some case studies, some actual building implementation strategies, and just learning from some experienced professionals. So join us on December 16th at noon for that session. We'd love to learn who's in the room. Please answer these poll questions. We'll leave them open for about just 40 seconds or so. Answer these. It just helps us and our speakers understand who's in the room, who's joining us, what perspectives are you bringing. If you want to share even more information, it'd be great to know your job title and or role. You can put that into the chat. Again, it's helpful for our speakers to know and be able to showcase the information to make sure it's relevant and interesting to all of you. All right, Rim Jim's going to share that pullback. So it looks like we have some consultants, some folks in education, engineer, government and nonprofit, and some utility folks. So we appreciate everyone joining us. Our next question is more about our content that we want to offer today. So we'd love to hear from you on what you're hoping to learn today. Again, a way that we can just showcase the information from both our speakers as well as some of the questions that we have queued up, and maybe some of the questions that you'll be thinking about during the presentation. See who else might have similar interests to yours. Just leave that open for 10 more seconds. Thank you. Okay, looks like we got a good amount of participation. So we have just looking for incentives and funding opportunities. We'll spend a little bit of time on broader funding opportunities and thinking about ways to finance these retrofits, but we'll spend a fair amount of time talking about a ComEd utility program, the retro commissioning program, and then thinking about how to develop and update a decarbonization roadmap. So these are great things. We're glad that you're all here, and we also heard how to engage stakeholders in planning. That's another area that we'll talk about, what your team could look like, who some of the key decision makers are, and also additional resources. We just have a small amount of time today, and this is a enormous undertaking for building teams, thinking about how to reduce your energy and thinking about improving the operations of your building. So let's get started. I'd love to introduce our two speakers. Today we have Abdul Hadi from Resource Innovations. They do a variety of work on behalf of utilities, including ComEd, who he'll be representing today. And then we have Connor from Slipstream as their principal engineer. We're excited to have both of these experts who not only are experts in this field, but are also good friends of the Illinois Green Alliance and the Building Energy Hub. So I'd love to just take a moment and introduce you to Connor Jansen. He's a lead AP at Slipstream as their principal engineer. And sorry, give me one moment to get my slides open. Oh my gosh, so sorry, everyone. Thank you for your patience. Connor provides consulting, design advice, and analysis to help clients achieve exceptional performance within the built environment in the areas of energy, indoor environmental quality, and daylighting. As a member of the Slipstream team, Connor brings with him robust project experiences delivering world-class sustainable delivering world-class sustainable buildings across multiple building typologies and regions. Underpinning his technical and creative use of proven technologies is a strong consideration of challenges faced by both building architects and building engineers when working towards an integrated solution. He regularly contributes to the industry and through presenting at conferences, studio design critiques, and developed AIA workshops, and is an active member of IBPSA. And with that, I'd love for Connor to come on screen and take it away.
Great, thanks, Kendi. Hi, everybody. I'm going to kick us off here with a little bit on the why and then the how when it comes to building performance planning or strategic decarbonization planning. And to do that and get us all in that mindset, we've got a few timelines to talk through. So the first one here is carbon is long lasting and cumulative, and we need to adapt and mitigate our built environment. Emissions peaked generally this year, so that's great. State of Illinois has a 50% greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal from past historic levels by 2030, and then a net zero emissions goal for 2050. Next slide. At the same time, the grid is getting cleaner. Wind and solar surpass coal generation for the first time this year. And the Illinois goal for a 40% emission reduction for the electrical grid by 2030 is certainly possible and on the table, so we're tracking towards that. And then Illinois is also targeting net zero generation on or before 2050. Next timeline. So there are limited opportunities, though, to electrify at equipment end of life within our buildings. And that's because the equipment replacement cycle is about 15 to 20 years. And so we get kind of 2 bites at the apple to take advantage of that cleaning grid before we hit our 2050 net zero goal. And planned replacements of equipment certainly increase viability and help reduce things like stranded assets. And this is all really important because by 2050, 80% of the buildings will already exist today. Next slide. Commercial buildings are complex, and much of this work requires planning. Things like one-for-one equipment replacements, or I'd say fairly conventional energy efficiency, don't need a whole lot of longer-term planning. But phased approaches and partial displacement of combustion systems certainly do. And we know that integrated engineered plans can take many years to accomplish. So how do we do this work? Well, there are several guides out there focused on building improvement planning processes. Two out of this list that I'd like to highlight. One would be the Building Energy Hubs Building Performance Planning Guide. So you can get a lot of additional detail beyond what I'll be highlighting today on the hub. And then the other one would be the ASHRAE and USGBC partnership for the Strategic Decarbonization Planning Guide. That just launched. There was some events around that at Green Build this past week as well. So what we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of these guides and help build out some of these guides. And so what I want to do today is step through some of the key components behind this planning process. Next slide. So to make that shift, essentially, we start with the foundation of energy efficiency audits, benchmarking things like greenhouse gas emissions and energy, taking a look at electrification readiness, and then proposing emission reduction scenarios. This is essentially an emission reduction or a greenhouse gas emission audit. And there's some really good details out there on that put forward by the Better Building Challenge, and there's a nice checklist of what that all entails. But at the end of the day, this really doesn't amount to a plan. So to make that shift happen, I've highlighted 4 core components. The first is establishing a business as usual comparison. Next is reviewing performance over time. Then we have expanding beyond typical efficiency measures. And lastly, creating an implementation timeline tied to investment triggers. We'll talk about all of these in a bit more detail. The first one, establishing a business as usual case. So this essentially becomes the baseline in which you compare against over the next 25 years. So these plans often make sense to work out all the way to 2050. Not in all cases, but that's a good starting point. Sometimes they can be condensed a bit more than that. And it's important for the first 5 to 10 years to be the most precise within these. And as we establish the business as usual case, this combines operational expenditures, which I think a lot of us are used to working with, right? Utility costs, maintenance costs. In some instances, alternative compliance payments or essentially fines tied to building performance standards get included within this, and costs likely escalate year over year like utility costs can do. A lot of this building performance planning process is happening out east, New England area, New York, where these building performance standards exist in those jurisdictions. It's really helping existing buildings create a plan and improve energy over time. And often if that plan is being followed, there is no real need to worry about these ACP payments. The other piece, equally as important, or in some cases more important than the operational expenditures, would be the capital expenditures. So this is what would it cost to just continue to maintain your building and replace your equipment with major equipment with like-for-like equipment. So your boiler fails, okay, what does it cost to replace that with a brand new boiler? And the easiest way to work with these numbers are to use today's costs. Talk a little bit more on the next slide about how this BIU is used. So as I said, this really becomes the baseline for comparison. And as we're thinking about strategic decarbonization investments or building performance plans, that total sum of costs can be fairly high. It can be a bit daunting and add some sticker shock and almost in some ways paralyze projects from moving forward. But when you start to piece those apart and compare them to what you would need to spend anyway, just to keep your building operating over the next 10, 15, 25 years, that delta and incremental cost between the two starts to become much more manageable. And once you can start to understand and articulate that, you can also start to dive into what potential avoided risks are there from moving away from that business as usual pathway. So maybe some risk could be obsolescence within the building. You've got older equipment. Um, you know, you might not be as resilient with those types of systems. You might not be able to manage increased energy prices and things like that. And then on top of that, you can start to think about what are the value adds and co-benefits from moving into that decarbonization pathway. Maybe you're getting newer HVAC systems, which improve ventilation and comfort. Perhaps you're planning to sell your building and just getting things updated, removing those old fan coil units or something like that will help increase exit yield when that building's going to be sold. Sometimes these things are a bit hard to add monetary value for as a consultant, and so you don't need to track all of those, but it's important to have that conversation with owners, financial stakeholders as you're working through these plans. Next slide. The next main piece is performance over time. And this is about projecting and comparing emissions over time because they ultimately change year over year as the grid gets cleaner. So in order to do this work, emission factors are needed. And some jurisdictions publish these, some states publish annual emission factors, or there are tools like Cambium, which can project this out. It does get a little bit complex. So one of the simplest ways to approach this is to look up the annual grid emissions for your state, for your location, and take that as a starting point. And then simply just draw a straight line and project that down to 0 by 2050. That's essentially the premise we're working towards as we think about decarbonizing buildings, and it also aligns with the goals of the state of Illinois. Now here we've got some projections. This is for some work with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center around their building electrification transformation accelerator. So it is focused on Massachusetts, but it does a really nice job of kind of showing how this can work and work in conjunction with building performance standards as well. So you see kind of in the background the gray steps that are happening there. That is from the Boston performance requirements for greenhouse gas emissions per square foot within larger commercial buildings, and that ratchets down year over year. And then we're projecting out in the business as usual case, and you see that line kind of sloping down, and that is emissions being reduced over time for their electricity use. But you don't see those big steps or ratchets down in overall carbon emission. And that's what you start to see within the optimized decarbonization pathway. Those are kind of milestones that you'll see within some of the timeline generation of the performance outcomes from different measures being introduced over time. Once that work gets done, the building's electrified, you're now on a pathway to be at or near net zero emissions by 2050. Next slide. The third big takeaway out of the four that we're highlighting is to expand the approach when looking at measures. So we've highlighted 5 potential measure categories. The first one is energy efficiency. It's foundational. Essentially, doing the energy efficiency work that's needed right up front makes a lot of sense to help buildings get on track for this kind of longer term plan of decarbonization. A lot of these measures have really been figured out and have really good financial backing to get that work done right away. And so what we recommend when really diving into building performance plan or strategic decarbonization plan is not to necessarily focus on energy efficiency in terms of a lot of the detail behind it, because we already know what these energy efficiency measures generally are, but instead focus on things like load reduction measures. So these could be like adding triple pane windows or advanced heat recovery systems that may have not made a lot of financial sense in the conventional energy efficiency world. But as you're thinking about electrifying your building systems and really focused on reducing heat pump equipment size and peak load implications, um, things like that triple pane window start to make more sense as a optimized package. The next might be a new one is enabling measures. And these are important steps to ready building infrastructure for electrification. So it could be upgrades to local electrical panels, switchgear upgrade. It could be changes to some of the HVAC infrastructure, maybe trying to switch out some of that work towards lower temperature distribution, or doing something like a thermal stress test to start to understand where some of the bottlenecks within your system could be. Then we have electrification. Um, you know, this could be full electrification or it could be partial electrification. So things like dual fuel heat pumps or doing partial displacement with air to water heat pumps for your boilers are all valid ways to make some pretty significant improvements in both operational greenhouse gas emissions as well as operational costs. And then lastly, renewables and battery storage. Here, really trying to focus both on greenhouse gas reductions, operational costs, and then that third component is thinking about ways to shift or shed load using batteries to help reduce those peak strains on the grid and the subsequent costs from peak electrical demands. Next slide. As these optimized systems are being put together, it's important to think about the total lifetime costs. And so here we're looking at that incremental cost between the business as usual case and those proposed solutions. And that's really what should be driving the decisions. Simple payback has a lot of limitations when you're thinking about longer term planning. You don't necessarily need to do a full life cycle cost analysis, but it's important to analyze these investments across the length of that decarbonization plan. So here, as an example, if you were to just take standalone, okay, we want to uh, decarbonize, fully electrify our building, and just look at that as a standalone measure. In this case, it had a 48-year simple payback. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? But if you start to think about it over a period of time where you're going to also have to be making investments just to keep your building up and running and replacing equipment with like for like equipment, that optimized decarbonization scenario was only 11% incremental cost over that BAU and showed nearly $1 million in improvements over that 25-year life cycle. And on top of that, you're also getting a higher performing building at the end of the day. So really thinking about that total cost is critical, and moving away from kind of that default thinking around simple paybacks. Next slide. All right, so this is our last kind of core component here, and that is the creation of an implementation timeline. And so this can be fairly flexible in terms of what it includes, and we want these plans to be flexible at the end of the day, but provide some guidance in terms of sequential steps and the measures that are needed to get this work done. And so we recommend having three core components to this. The first would be having a list of triggers and key considerations for implementation. This could be when, equipment reaches its end of life. Maybe there's a large tenant expiration coming up and it makes sense to get work done by then. Um, there could be changes to the code coming up, things like that. Maybe core goals to get put in there. And it's important to have those listed out with specific dates. Then there's an order of implementation of measures. So here, highlighting, doing some of that efficiency work first, then making sure that, you're getting, a measure set to upgrade electrical infrastructure, replace your roof before you start putting in new equipment that's going to go on that roof and that needs electrical infrastructure changes. So really it's just trying to get that mapped out. So over time, those investments can be made and financed. And then lastly is tracking savings at these key milestones, so you know what those performance outcomes are expected to be as you implement these different phases of work. And so with that, believe I'll pass it over back to Kindy. Yes.
Yes. Connor, thank you so much. That was really helpful in laying out just the opportunities for impact. We're going to come back with some questions in a moment. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Abdul Hadi. Abdul Hadi is an experienced energy efficiency professional with over a decade of expertise in energy auditing, retrocommissioning, and utility program management. He currently serves as principal at Resource Innovations, leading the ComEd retrocommissioning offering, where he focuses on increasing service provider engagement, fostering cross-collaboration among offering, and driving pipeline development. His career has centered on advancing energy optimization strategies that help organizations reduce cost, improve building performance, and achieve sustainability goals. He's passionate about innovation and collaboration. Abdul Hadi has contributed to numerous facility improvement initiatives, often partnering with universities, industry groups, and utilities to expand access to energy efficiency programs. And beyond his professional role, he enjoys traveling and playing soccer. We're so lucky to have Abdul Hadi with us today. He, as I've mentioned, both him and Connor are wonderful friends to the Illinois Green Alliance and Building Energy Hub, and one of the experts we look to regularly for resources and knowledge. And this program in particular has so much to offer throughout the ComEd territory. With that, I'd love to have Abdul Hadi come off of mute, and it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Kindy, for the introduction, and shout out to the Building Energy Hub team for all the great work that you're doing, and great presentation, Connor. Thank you for kicking things off here and setting the stage, talking about the why and the how. And another great cost-effective tool to consider as you're thinking about decarbonization would be retrocommissioning. It's cost-effective and kind of help you get started on a lot of things. So what is RCX? What is retrocommissioning? It's the process of improving performance of existing buildings by identifying and correcting ways of how you currently run your facility. It will point out all inefficiencies and help you determine next steps. The RCX study will help you ensure that your equipment is running as intended, and it's meeting your needs and standards, and also ensure the occupant comfort level is met as well. So why we're doing this. There's a lot of great benefits, including reducing your energy usage. That's the biggest one. But also, it's going to help you ensure that your equipment is in a good place. And the the other benefits, it will include, if you can go to the next slide, please, just gaining a deeper understanding of your facility. Every building consists of HVAC systems, lighting systems, and so on. And building engineers typically focus on running the building efficiently, or excuse me, just running the building and making sure that they're not running into any issues. And this RCX study will help them better understand why certain equipment are running in a certain way and what are ideas and things that they can do to help enhance that. One of the things that an RCX study would also provide is if you're working towards any energy benchmarking or certifications, this study will definitely serve that purpose and help streamline that process a little bit. A big thing to highlight here is a lot of facility teams and building engineers, they have the knowledge to identify these opportunities, but they don't have the time for it. So this study, or if you're considering RCX, they will bring a team, a service provider that will be the engineering arm that will support these chief engineers and their teams to help look into these opportunities. They'll help them determine how much savings that will come up with or how much it will cost to fix some of these issues. So a good and a successful RCX project typically relies on collaborating with the building engineer and their team. And they will help in pointing out areas that could use some improvement and some attention. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of utility incentive programs out there that support retro commissioning. And today I'll highlight the ComEd RCX program and talk a little bit about how it's structured and all the benefits it's going to provide. So ComEd RCX is again, engineering study-based program focusing on low-hanging fruits, energy conservation measures that are typically a year and a half payback period or less. These are typically like the easy go-to measures before you start considering major and capital improvements. It's a fully funded study by ComEd, which is great. So we typically handle all the payments and fees to the service providers. It usually results with about 5 to 10% of annual usage in savings. And focusing on identifying measures that touch on HVAC systems and lighting systems. There are 3 different tracks, Flex, RCX Flex, MVCX, and VCX. They're all designed to target specific set of audience, whatever your facility type is, your needs are, there's going to be an option that would work well for you. RCX Flex is more of a traditional retro commissioning where the service provider would come in and identify measures and implement and verify, while monitoring-based commissioning is focused more on gaining a deeper understanding. It's a longer-term engagement with a customer, analyzing lots of data, how your equipment are running, and yeah, just a deeper dive into your systems. And finally, VCX, virtual commissioning. That one is more designed and dedicated to smaller sized facilities. There's included a website here for more information, but I'll touch on that in a little bit. So some of the measures that we typically see on these studies, if you can go to the next slide, please, that includes scheduling equipment, whether it's air handling units, pumps, fans, VFDs, and so on. Scheduling is a big chunk. It's usually underestimated how much it's available in a facility. Even though a building engineer might be on top of things, overrides do happen frequently. And that's why it's really good to focus or conduct an RCX study every couple of years, just because things do change. Polar vortices happen, major tenants move in and out of office buildings, and so on. So all these changes typically lead to things that may run differently than what they're supposed to be doing or expected to do. So just back to the top 10 measures listed here, a lot of the savings that you will see will come from scheduling, temperature resets, duct static pressure resets, and so on. Next slide. All right. So in addition to all the energy savings associated with the study, and the study being fully funded by ComEd, there's also a cash incentive regarding implementation that is based on verified savings. So this is great because it will help cover up to 100% of your implementation cost on these measures. And in some cases, you will come up with zero out-of-pocket investment and gain a lot of energy savings and reduction in your operating costs. All right. So with that said, I would again say RCX is a great place to start. If you're not sure where to go or whether this is a good fit for your facility or not, we work with all facility types, building sizes. Make sure to connect. We have a phone number here listed, or you can reach out to me directly. And I also included a couple other resources here. Another really great offering to explore is the free facility assessment. I mean, it's in the name, it's free, and it's really a good way to start your energy efficiency journey, because ComEd will send out a team to your facility to do a quick energy audit, put together a list of some potential capital improvements, list out all the incentives available for those improvements, and even include a list of other offerings that your building and facility could be a good fit for. And for example, like RCX could be one of those recommendations. So just tying this back to what Connor presented on, there are many ways and avenues that you can take to reach your decarb goals. Some of them are more focused on energy efficiency and reducing your consumption. And with those ones, there are a lot of utility incentive programs that provide rebates and incentives and services to help simplify the journey for you, help provide support and cash incentives to offset all these costs and make this a more cost-effective journey. And on top of that, ComEd is also offering some, solar programs, EV programs, and such that's more focused on electrifications. So yeah, with that said, I will pause here and turn it back to Kindy.
Great. Thank you. And when we send out the slide deck after today's presentation will include links for all those links you'll be able to access as well. So thank you both. I think I'm probably not alone and that it feels a little overwhelming and it's a lot of moving parts. So I'm just gonna dive into a couple easy kind of questions. And if you have questions of your own, for those of you joining us today, you can either go into the Q&A box or the chat box. You can also raise your hand and we can take you off of mute. So we do have a question. This is for Abdul Hadi. Would it be in the scope of the presentation today, which you did get covered some of it before this person asked this question about the ComEd RCX program? Can you talk a little bit about the cost of the audit activities to identify measures, or is it just the implemented savings of kilowatt hours?
Yeah, great question. So there is zero dollar commitment upfront. It's fully funded. That's the beauty of it. It's all driven by the service provider. So the customer or whoever is signing up for the project is going to get a report. It's going to start the project, get an investigation report with all the identified measure. And up to that point, there's $0 commitment. And only when the measures are presented and decisions are made, that's when it's going to require some financial commitments and investments on that end. And then also, I highlighted a little bit about the implementation incentive. So that implementation incentive will be paid out once the customer implements and verifies measures. So that incentive check will be delivered basically afterwards.
Great, thank you. If you wanna, if you need more clarifying answers or have additional follow-up questions, and we can stop sharing the slide deck for now. I think we'd just like to have a discussion. So for this question is for both Connor and Abdul Hadi. Maybe Abdul Hadi, you can start. For building owners who are unsure where to begin, what's the first low risk step they can take? And maybe just, you know, giving a little bit more detail on what does it really take to get that RCX process started? And maybe who should be involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk. Let's
Okay,
connect. That's the easiest way and best way. We'll have a 15-minute conversation just to determine what facility type you have, and what are the best options for you and where to go. Even if it's not retro commissioning, that's not the answer. We'll
sure.
determine and point you in the right direction. And usually I would say a successful project includes, buy-in from chief engineers. That's a big one. Also financial decision makers, as well as controls contractors, because essentially they're doing the implementation work, and the sooner you loop them in, the better the outcome is.
Great, thank you. Connor? Good
Yeah.
first steps.
Good first low risk steps, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say first is if you haven't had a chance to look through all the resources on the Building Energy Hub, that's
Oh,
a
yeah,
fantastic
thanks.
spot to kick
Good.
things off. There are specific resources around building performance planning that we covered a little bit here and in the presentation today. There's also things like best practices around operations and maintenance and some playbooks set up for folks like building owners to start really thinking about improving building energy efficiency and working towards decarbonization. On top of that, I'd say, if you were to move forward with RCX or getting a free audit, those are great ways, as we've started to point towards understanding how your building is operating and
Mhm.
picture of what might be needed next. So I think it's perfectly okay to ask those consultants if they could help you document and understand, what the age of your equipment is, how much useful life might be there, so you can start to get ahead of, potential issues that might come up.
Great. Another question I'm curious about, because it does seem like there's a variety of folks, both internally and externally to a building. Can you talk about what partnerships or collaborations can really make or break projects? Either having someone left behind that might be a critical part, or they come in too late to these conversations or this planning work, or just ways to make sure that all the right people are on the table.
I can start us off with that, and maybe I'll kind of
Yeah.
start high level there. And so from my perspective, it's really critical to involve um, both decision makers around the operational expenditure side within a building, as well as the CapEx side, capital expenditure planning.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be, facility operators who are very familiar with how the building's operating and where opportunities might be to increase efficiency, reduce operational costs, improve performance. But at the same time, bringing in some of the folks maybe within, depending on the size of the building and the organization managing it, maybe within the C-suite, or those who are really thinking about the long-term planning for that building. So when are major tenant expirations coming up? Are there tenant improvement plans happening? What does that 10-year picture look like? And having both those two perspectives there, plus that energy expert to talk through, how to align, measures over time, how to get kind of co-benefits of maybe doing some system switches, big major changes, and connecting those two when other changes are happening or are needed within the building.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, maybe and that's a great uh answer, Connor. And maybe the one thing I would add to that is a lot of this also is built on trust. So how can we establish that trust between the service provider, the contractor, and the building owner and the facilities team? They're very familiar with their building. They've been running it for many years. It's hard to bring in someone to kind of show them how to do it. It's I think that the studies are not intended to do that. It's more of just, hey, we're here to support you, and we're here to identify some potential areas that you might want to look into.
Yeah.
By the end of the day, it's the customer's decision to do what's best for their facility, and um, great communications could help, drive the project in that direction. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of clashing, a lot of pissed off people, and a lot of
Right.
just
Yeah.
not the results you want to see.
Yeah, great. We have a question from the audience. Sabruha Karathi.
Hi, thank you, Kendi. I
Yes.
want to, this is a very important discussion that you're having about collaboration and where to begin. And I kind just want to, I'll say a little bit about the problem and then I'll ask my question. I, Collaboration is absolutely essential to driving a project of this scale, and collaboration between not only individuals at one facility, but probably like the portfolio owner or someone who's centrally responsible. And I think it's just before, so now I'm getting into my question. before anyone takes the initiative and starts spending hours equal to dollars on kicking off this net zero planning process, generally they would be asked to, like, the process that we walked through in Connor's presentation, that sounds like, well, you hire a consultant who would have to get data from 12 buildings and then do a phasing out planning and all of that, which is great, which is ideal. But I think if I'm sitting with the owners, I would want some kind of feasibility or some starting off something to start off, kick off the process, that we're not entering, like, there is something worthwhile, feasible to find out here, and we're not, running into a rabbit hole. So are there, like, what are the initial filtering out studies that we can do to just make the project, like, to make the planning project attractive or sellable to a portfolio owner?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to take I can take a first pass at that, because it is a challenge to not necessarily be able to take a deep dive in a highly detailed plan. And if we think about scaling this work, that can be challenging to do, right? And so where do we start in the simplest case? And one, if you have a portfolio, right? I think we go back to some of the basics around benchmarking, start to think about which buildings and sites to prioritize. I think there also needs to be that conversation around which buildings and sites make sense to prioritize from a capital planning perspective. Are these buildings that you want to hang on to for a long time? Do you have what are your plans with them over the next 5 or 10 years? And start having those types of conversations. That doesn't need really any analysis. Benchmarking in theory will be done for lots of sites around Chicagoland area. From there, one of the easiest things to do, and as we've kind of alluded to, you can get a great start on this through RCX or through the free um, audit services, but it's understanding what the short and medium term needs are for major building equipment. So you can start prioritizing maybe some of that enabling work that needs to get done ahead of that equipment reaching its end of life. I think those types of things don't need a lot of analysis, and really just start to understand, like, broad brush. Okay, my goal is to get to this net zero goal. That means we're going to have to transition some of that equipment that's combustion-based equipment out. We're going to have to cover all of that low-hanging fruit of energy efficiency. And there are tools and resources to do that without really needing that expensive consultant to jump in that building.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Abdul Hadi?
Yeah, I think Connor, you touched on a good point here is priorities and long-term planning. And in some cases also, even though like RCX study, for example, is a fully funded study, in order to make it more effective, you need good equipment, like good building automation system, being able to read data, generate trends and stuff like that. So if your building is not even at that point yet, then you might want to consider installing a building automation system if you don't have one, for example. So it is baby steps. And the good part is ComEd does have like an outreach service provider program and energy advisors that could guide you through that EE journey and show you the way and help you understand, okay, you're at this point and you need to do 1, 2, 3 first before we dive into RCX or start considering major retrofits and so on.
Great, thank you, and thank you for that question, because I think one of the reasons that we are doing this series is just to start breaking down these steps, who to think about talking to, what resources and peers that you should be thinking about. And with that, I'd love to have the slide deck come back up. And we're going to wrap up. So there's a lot of ways to engage with the hub. We have a variety of resources that we've shared in the chat today. You can use this QR code. In addition to many of the guides and resources, both that we've produced and our colleagues, national associations have produced, we have a variety of resources on our website. I can't say enough good things about working with ComEd and your other utilities. We have a variety of webinars that we've already done with ComEd along with People's Gas, and have some other funding resources on our website as well. We also encourage you to think about following us on LinkedIn, signing up for our newsletter. And if we are always looking for partnership, whether that's volunteering your time or thinking about showcasing a project or a building that you've been able to take some of these steps around either retrofitting, retro commissioning, or even just thinking about benchmarking. So we appreciate your interest. We're so excited to continue the conversation next month. Thank you again so much to Abdul Hadi from Resource Innovations and ComEd, and Connor Jansen from Slipstream, two wonderful organizations that are here to help you along with the Building Energy Hub. Thank you so much for your time today, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you. So there's a lot of ways to engage with the hub. We have a variety of resources that we've shared in the chat today. You can use this QR code. In addition to many of the guides and resources, both that we've produced and our colleagues, national associations have produced, we have a variety of resources on our website. I can't say enough good things about working with ComEd and your other utilities. We have a variety of webinars that we've already done with ComEd along with People's Gas, and have some other funding resources on our website as well. We also encourage you to think about following us on LinkedIn, signing up for our newsletter. And if we are always looking for partnership, whether that's volunteering your time or thinking about showcasing a project or a building that you've been able to take some of these steps around either retrofitting, retro commissioning, or even just thinking about benchmarking. So we appreciate your interest. We're so excited to continue the conversation next month. Thank you again so much to Abdul Hadi from Resource Innovations and ComEd, and Connor Jansen from Slipstream, two wonderful organizations that are here to help you along with the Building Energy Hub. Thank you so much for your time today, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.